What is going on, everybody? This is Randall Floor 19, man with the million, back again with another weekly episode of the Xbox 2 podcast. I think it's like number 209, 210, 212. I really don't know. I don't know how many it is. Is it 210? All right. And with me, as usual, my co-host, my buddy, Jez Corden, senior editor, whatever your job title is over at the good old Windows Central. Okay. So what is going on, buddy? How you doing?
Oh man, it's I'm doing. You know, been another week of Xbox stuff, and I'm just tired. I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired, Rand. I'm tired. I had a bit of a break this week to try and recover from all the Elden Ring traffic stress of the last month or so. It's quieting down a bit now, thank God. So hopefully things will. I'm in two minds because I'm thirsty for Xbox news like everyone else, but at the same time I'm like, that means more work for me. So kind of like don't want more Xbox news at the same time. So but yeah, there has been quite a lot of news, little bits and pieces this week, and we're gonna get into it.
Yeah, Xbox was at GDC talking about some stuff, right? But you were on vacation
Yes.
though.
Yes, I was. I wasn't working last week, so I sort of a little bit out of the loop on some of this stuff. So you're gonna have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to context and that kind of thing, I'm afraid.
But people want your context. They don't need my context. You know, because you have all the information about everything.
Yeah, well, people want your context, Rand. What are you talking about? They love your context. You're Randall Mr. Context. That's your new name that I just made up right now.
Interesting. You know, I don't know. It seems like chat has stopped updating for me, so I gotta close the chat window and open up a new one because I don't know if it's just me, but like, yeah, it doesn't seem
YouTube breaking? That
Yeah,
doesn't
I know,
sound...
right? YouTube breaking?
That's a shocker.
Shocked, right? That always does seem to happen at some point. Yeah, let us know in chat if everything's going good. Should be. At least it looks like it's going good on my end, but I don't know. I was just a little worried there because all of a sudden, like, everything just stopped. So, but anyways, we're here on a Saturday. Both me and Jez could not do the show yesterday. I had a family member who had surgery, and I was the person taking them to the hospital and picking them up, and I wasn't sure what day I was picking them up, so I was like, I don't know if I can do the show Friday because typically it would be like, okay, we're going to do the show, and all of a sudden I would get a phone call from the hospital, and I'd have to go get the person, and I'd be like, well, we got to end the show, so it's kind of one of those things where it was like, yeah, Friday was a no-go because of that. Anyways.
Yeah.
But everything's good. So, yeah. But before we get into everything, you know, if you guys were enjoying the show, if you do us a big favor, make sure you hit the like button and, you know, send this out. Twitter, Facebook, all those places, because sometimes YouTube just doesn't do their job at all, right? So, before we get into all these wonderful topics like Game Pass at GDC, the big success that the service is basically having, Halo TV show is finally out and available, and we know Jez has watched it, right? Because Jez loves Halo. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. PlayStation Spartacus, the Game Pass killer, as I've seen thrown around social media, is apparently getting revealed next week. And there's a whole bunch of other things I want to talk about. But first, we got to mention that, Jez, is this week, are we powered by anything?
I think we are, Rand. I think we're powered, once again, by Manscaped.
Indeed. So this week's podcast is once again sponsored by Manscaped. Thank you very much for sponsoring the show. And with the code XB2, that is the letter X, the letter B, and the number 2, If you put that in the checkout, you get 20% off, free worldwide shipping. Well, 20% off everything on the store, as well as free worldwide shipping on literally everything, like boxers, cologne, razors, and other tools to spruce up your family jewelry.
But I don't actually know if it's coming out in the summer, but I haven't seen it. And have you seen it? I don't know if you've seen it either.
I don't watch TV shows. Like, here's the thing. I binge TV shows. So I won't watch a show unless it's fully completed. So I hate, you know, when the whole Netflix thing started and every show was like dropped at once, it was amazing, right? And everybody kind of copied them. But then slowly but surely, all these companies like Amazon and, you know, when Disney Plus entered the scene, they all started to basically go back to the weekly format. And I just can't go back. I literally cannot go back and watch a show week to week. I only did it for Wheel of Time because Wheel of Time means so much to me. And I had to watch that week to week. But that's like the only thing I would potentially watch week to week. So no, even though I love Halo, it's my favorite video game franchise, I'm putting my foot down and I'm not going to start watching it until it's all completed. Because I'm not going to just watch one episode and wait a week. I'm done with that. I thought we moved on, but apparently not. Apparently these companies have other ideas. You know, they want the hype to last from week to week. I personally can't watch TV shows like that anymore. So, yeah, I haven't watched it. Cryo says that it's available via Sky Show in the UK.
Sky Show.
Yeah.
Never even heard of it. So this is what I'm talking about, man. If it ain't on Netflix or Disney Plus, it doesn't exist to me.
Mm.
So I ain't enough into TV, any TV really, to go hunting down on an irregular service. Sky Show, never heard of it. Never going to use it. Never going to subscribe to it. So if Microsoft wants me to watch their stuff, they need to put it on a service I actually care about, and that isn't anything like that. So I'm probably never going to watch it personally. But you know, since you haven't seen it and I haven't seen it, I think the best way to talk about it is probably how, I don't know, we've seen friends react to it and stuff. Because honestly, I haven't really seen that much negativity about it. If it, like, I kind of get, I get some, I get the feeling that Halo fans are hard to please. You know, sorry, to put it lightly, I get the kind of impression that Halo fans are hard to please, and you know, so the fact that it hasn't been universally reviled, and that people seem at least somewhat optimistic about it, that's potentially a good sign, right? In a world where, like, you know, we've had massive flops like the Cowboy Bebop live action show. Like, have any of your friends like recommended it to you or talked to you about it, or
what, the Halo show?
What they said about it? Yeah.
No, nobody's talked to me about it. Actually, Cognito talked to me about it because Cognito went to the premiere. And we got a comment from Aragorn, who's a channel member, says, "How can you have an Xbox podcast and not watch the first episode?" Which is a good question. And I'm going to reply to that by saying, I'm going to refer to what I said originally, which was, I don't watch TV shows until they're complete. So I'm not watching one episode and then waiting, or two episodes and then waiting a week. I don't care that I run an Xbox podcast, personally. I just, that's not how I consume my TV shows. I did think about, well, maybe I should watch it so I can talk about it in the podcast, but I'd rather talk about the full season rather than the first season. But I have seen people complain about, like, the whole helmet situation. Because I guess...
Yeah, because he shows his face,
He shows his face in the first episode. And there are a lot of people upset by that because we haven't seen his face in the game. And certain people feel that it's disrespectful to the game to have the TV show, like, reveal his face first. And I just kind of view that as different mediums. You know, you hire Pablo Schreier, or however you say his last name, to you hire that guy because you need to like have him act, and it's like you don't keep him behind, because if you're gonna hire somebody and keep him in the suit and never show his face, you might as well just have Steve Downes do the voice, right? Because it's almost at that
Yeah.
point like how with Darth Vader in the original Star Wars movies, where they had somebody in the suit, but then they had somebody do a voiceover. But when you actually hire somebody like Pablo to be in the suit, you're gonna want to show his face at some point. You use his voice, show his face, so it's just like, yeah. I mean, I expected it to happen, and it's completely different canon from the from the game. So it's not like that's what he's gonna look like in the game. So, yeah, I don't really see
Yeah.
that as a big deal personally.
Yeah, I kind of like the only video games TV or movie adaptation that I really cared about was the Warcraft one, because like obviously I care about Warcraft and whatever. And in that movie they really do, change a lot of the lore, and the format and all that stuff. But you can't help just thinking like there's just no way they could have made it a one-to-one copy of the games, because like the games span decades, whereas you've got to condense all that down into a single sort of viewable show. Now the resulting product of the Warcraft movie was a mess, because they did arguably tried to cram in too much lore from the games. I think probably they tried really hard to explain a lot of stuff and get people up to speed. And like when I was watching it with my friends, I kept having to pause it and explain what was going on, because I knew the backstory of the lore and the implications a lot of the stuff was having that was going on screen that wasn't explained very well, because the movie studio cut so much out apparently to get the view time down. So translating things to different mediums is always going to result in things that you maybe don't agree with. But I suppose what we should be looking at is, have they done a good job of it? Does it have they translated it well? Are they telling a good story? And it's okay to be like, well, it's not going to be a one-to-one fit with the games, I think. But as long as it's a good story and it sort of has enough nods and stuff, I think it's good.
Well, it did break
in
records
that
though.
way.
It did break records for Paramount Plus. A whole bunch of like first day 24-hour streaming records and stuff, like their biggest premiere ever, which was originally 1883. So it seems to be doing quite well for Paramount Plus. No numbers given though, so can't really talk about how well it's doing. We already know it's been renewed for season 2, and I wonder if there's one of those things where Halo fans, because we got a comment here from MVP Gamer Skills, says real Halo fans hate the show. It's trash. It's getting universally disliked and poorly reviewed. Yeah, the reviews aren't the best, but I have definitely seen people say they like it. But I wonder if it's one of those things where like the Halo fans are gonna just hate watch it, right? Where they're kind of just sitting around and being like, I hate the show so much, but then they're gonna be tuned in every Thursday or whenever the show drops, right?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like the premiere numbers could be reflecting the fact that people wanted to see the train wreck, right?
Very much so, and they have a big challenge in front of them. You gotta like make the show, you gotta appease the hardcore fans, but at the same time you gotta make it accessible enough to like reach a whole new audience of people, right? So. And I went through this with Wheel Time. You talked a little bit about like the difficulties of adapting something from one medium to the next, so like book to TV show. And trust me, like there's part of me that really didn't like some of the things they changed with Wheel of Time. And the last episode I thought was awful. And I'm not like super happy with how the season turned out, but I got my fingers crossed that like season 2 will be better, because the book, second book is better than the first. So I kind of look at it the same way of like first season of Halo, where it's like they kind of got to introduce people to the world, how everything like Chief and like his story and the Covenant and stuff. So it might seem rote or commonplace to like fans of the show, or they don't go deep in enough. But then like you got to realize that like you know there are going to be people watching it that have no clue who Master Chief is, or what the UNSC is, or who the Covenant are, and you kind of got to explain that. And sometimes first seasons of shows aren't good, and it's usually the second season and beyond that the quality, the improvements really take place, where they can kind of get feedback from the audience and then put it into the show, and then the show becomes better for it. So I'll watch the show. I mean, I'm watching the show for sure. I'm just waiting for it to be completely done, because that's how I watch my stuff. Forte, who I just got off the phone with because he called me out of nowhere. Who's been a member for 18 months, says, "Let's go. We almost 30 minutes into this. Sure to be a 180-minute podcast." I don't know about that. Looking forward to all this content Rand and Jez can talk about today. Well, you got to also, when you're talking about the time, Forte, you got to cut off the beginning intro, because, we had the 7-minute, like, going live soon screen. So that doesn't count, sir. That doesn't count at all. Chiefman says, Tunic was amazing. What a game after Elden Ring. I think that's the game I'm going to try to play next. Flame says, it's okay to want to wait for Halo show to be finished, Rand. I'm still waiting for Halo Infinite to be finished, so I'm waiting a whole decade. Kudos. Ooh, that's a burn.
Ooh,
He's waiting
spicy.
for Halo Infinite to be finished, and it never will be. Atticus says, once Chief took off his helmet, he wasn't Chief to me anymore. Maybe a C for me so far. Bad writing. And Jeff says, in post-world, with shows like Battlestar Galactica, I'm assuming is what he says, and The Expanse, the Halo TV series is very underwhelming. So it's definitely one of those things where there's a lot of varying opinions about whether or not the show's good. Yeah. I know my buddy Fonz was like, I watched one episode and I'm never going to watch it again. He hated it. And it's like, hey, you gave it a shot. You didn't like it? Don't even bother. Some people will just continue to watch it and continue to hate it and talk about it, though. That's what we call hate. You ever hate watch anything or hate play anything, Jez?
Man, I hate watch the Kardashians.
I thought you loved this though. What do you mean?
No, man. You don't watch the Kardashians because it's like, yeah, I really like the show. You watch it because it's like watching a train crash, man. You just can't look away. I don't know. So there's an element of that watching any reality TV show, really. I really like watching the American Gordon Ramsay shows, because you gotta know, right? When Gordon Ramsay does a British show, he's always really nice. He's got this reputation in America for being like really mean, really overcritical. That's something he does just for the American audience. When he does a British show, he's always super nice, really respectful and constructive. Yeah, maybe he's like a bit sharp sometimes, but he totally plays it up for American audience. So when I watch the American Gordon Ramsay shows, it's like cringe viewing TV, Like it's cringy seeing him behave like that. So like I watch it with that sort of context, but I don't know. If it was like, I do that with reality TV a lot because it's cringy, but is the Halo TV show going to be like so bad that it's cringy, or like those sort of cheesy 80s horror movies that are sort of completely unrealistic and unbelievable, and they always like, oh, what's in this dark corridor, and they don't run away and they end up getting killed, and the teenagers are really dumb. You kind of watch those shows with a sort of a sense of irony, right? But sometimes things are so bad that they're just bad. And I'm like thinking maybe the Halo TV show would be like that. I don't know. But like I say, I'm not super into Halo, and I try so hard to get into it. I just can't. It just doesn't. Nothing about Halo resonates with me. I don't know why. It's weird, but that's just the God's honest truth. I can't pretend to like it.
I know, but all people have to do is go back to the episode where you were playing the Halo multiplayer during the show for the first time and how much you loved it.
The Halo multiplayer is good. Like I've always played Halo multiplayer on and off over the years, and I do like it. It just doesn't come naturally to me like Call of Duty does. Like I can pick up Call of Duty and play it straight away, and when I play Halo, it's like you have to think.
You don't like to think. You play video
no,
games
I don't
not
like
to
thinking.
think.
I play video games not to think, right? I mean, well, I've gotten into Souls likes a bit, and you have to think a little bit in them. But when I play a shooter, I don't really want to think that much. In Call of Duty, you don't have to think. Halo, you have to think a bit. So again, it's sort of like I can play it in short bursts, and it's quite fun with friends, especially if you're drinking. I don't know, especially like the more casual modes. Like I really like what are Big Team Battle. Like Big Team Battle is the mode that I like, but I got sick of the 2 maps. There's only 2 maps, right? Or 3 or something.
3.
There's not many maps. I'm sick of the maps. Like I really need there to be more maps and more variety. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of variety in the game, but I don't know. It's another discussion, really.
Indeed.
I feel like we've talked about Halo to death.
Yeah.
And its lack of variety.
Yeah, I also put up a poll. I wanted to see what the chat thinks. I said, what do you think of the new Halo TV show? It's got 233 votes. 41% say they liked it. 29% said meh. 25% say they loved it. And 6% said they hated it. So...
yeah, I mean, that's a pretty decent spread, I would say. I mean, it could have been so much worse. It could have been this cringeworthy catastrophe like the Cowboy Bebop live adaptation. It seems like they've avoided the brunt of that. Maybe it's like not going to win any awards and it's not going to be remembered super fondly or something. But it's only episode 1, so maybe it'll get better,
Well, 2 episodes.
Or maybe it'll get worse.
Yeah. But it does seem like a lot of the criticism is centered around him showing his face and poor writing and stuff like that. But Nightwolf in the super chat says, there's also the report that they never looked at the games for reference, which confused me. Yeah, I know a lot of people pointed to that.
That's actually fake news.
Yeah, I did see that wasn't necessarily the truth.
That they clarified that comment and said that they didn't look at it while they were there or something. I can't remember exactly. But they said that everyone on the team did play the games. But that comment specifically was taken out of context. Maybe they're just trying to save face. I don't know. But I don't know. It does sound like they did play the games, at least to some degree.
Chris R. says, the moment someone says they are a real fan of something, I usually ignore their opinion. Gatekeeping is weird, coming from a huge Halo fan. Yeah, the real fan. The real fans of the Xbox 2 podcast,
The real fans of Xbox 2 podcast use Manscaped.
Yeah, code XP2, 20% off. And if you haven't bought anything from Manscaped, then you're just not a real Xbox 2 fan. Stupid stuff.
No, of course that's not true.
Yeah. Punkadish, who's been a member for 13 months, says, as much as I love Xbox, I have never been into Halo. Just never got into it. #fraud. Hey, man. Some people are like that. Halo is the reason I play on Xbox in the first place. But there are definitely people out there who don't like Halo who are Xbox fans. So,
they're too happy. The games are too happy.
You're too happy, you think?
They're too happy. I like my shooters to be dark and depressing, and Halo always has this sort of upbeat optimism about it, And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing that there's variety. It's just I just don't like that. I like my BioShocks and my Dooms, and I like my shooters to have an edge to them. I feel like Halo has like no kind of. There's nothing controversial about Halo. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I do think is odd after, and I'll tell you what, after RDX Son of Fett super chat where he says Halo's the highest viewed premiere in Paramount Plus. Indeed, it is. We talked about that, but I did think it's odd, and maybe a missed opportunity for there not to be any sort of cross promotion with the game and the TV show, right? Like, there's no like event going on right now in Halo Infinite. Like celebrating the new TV show. There's no like get the skins from the game, or the skins from the TV show rather in the game. Like you figured there would be a lot of big cross promotion you could do between the show and the game, and there just isn't any. And now maybe that could be for many different reasons. Maybe like they just weren't able to make any stuff for the show. But it just seems like that is something you would want to celebrate. Like, finally, after all this time, the Halo TV show's here, and you have a live service game that is supposed to get constantly updated with new stuff, and there just isn't anything. It just seems like a big missed opportunity. You know what I mean, Jez?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I get it, but at the same time, I also think like they really wanted this to not seem like a marketing thing, and they wanted it to be its own creative vision and stuff like that. So I also get it that they didn't do it that way, but I don't know. The whole idea behind this transmedia stuff, it's to sort of drive a halo effect over the brand in question, right? Like that League of Legends show on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called now. What's it called? The League of Legends show. Oh man, I can't remember what it's called.
Arcane.
But Arcane, yeah. That had like no cross promotional stuff with the game really, beyond like having some characters and some lore and stuff like that. So, you know, but that drove a massive halo effect over the game and increased curiosity in the game. Even I was thinking like, man, like, because loads of people were saying like, man, I've never played League of Legends, but Arcane's really good, and it makes them like more curious about the game potentially. But I think it's a good thing that they didn't try too hard to link it to the games, because what you want to do with these kind of things is bring in new people into your stuff, right? Like, yeah, you want to anchor it in the fans and the hardcore fan base to some degree, but you also want to make sure that you're appealing, from Microsoft's perspective, you want to make sure that you're appealing to fans who maybe never experienced Halo before, because maybe they'll watch the show and become a fan of the franchise through the show, you know?
Yeah. Anyways, Installation 7 says, Jez, you obviously don't know about Halo Reach. It's not a happy game. It's a dark, grim, atmospheric game. That is 100% true.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that about Halo Reach, and Halo Reach is the only one I haven't played. And a lot of people that I've talked to about this have told me to play Halo Reach. So maybe I do need to go and play Halo Reach and get a taste of that sort of the dark, because I know that there's dark stuff in the lore, and I know that like in the books and stuff, and like the origins of the Spartan program and all that stuff. I know that there is darker elements in the game's lore and history and stuff, but I don't really get a sense of that in the games, the ones that I've played anyway. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I do need to check out Halo Reach. Definitely do.
Doom says, I'm starting to feel like Halo as a franchise should be sunset at this point. Halo fans will never be happy, even if 343 gets everything right. Yeah.
I agree. Sunset it.
No, don't sunset it.
it.
But I feel like
bring all that budget to Gears of War, baby.
I feel like that's enough Halo talk for a show that me and you haven't watched yet. So
yeah,
maybe we'll talk about it when I actually watch the show when it's finished. But I thought this was interesting, Jez, because it's confirmation that there is a new game in the works over at Tango Gameworks. You know, they just released Ghostwire Tokyo exclusive for the PS5, which you've played a little bit of, although I remember you telling me it wasn't the best experience because you were having issues with the game running on PC. So
yeah, I can talk about Ghostwire in a bit if you want, but yeah, I didn't do a full review because I had PC problems, sadly, and I don't have a PlayStation, so.
But Shinji Mikami basically came out and said that he wants Tango Gameworks to move away from being known as a horror studio, and he wants them to make like smaller games and like non-horror. And that the game director of Evil Within 2 was already working on a brand new game that we might hear about sooner rather than later. But it definitely seems like he wants to move the studio out from being pigeonholed as horror. But I know you kind of love Evil Within. Does it disappoint you that potentially we're not going to be getting Evil Within 3 and that they're going to be making different types of games outside of the horror genre? Or are you excited to see what like creative, the creativity of the studio at hand when they're not really like, hey, you can make whatever you want now, basically?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, disappointing, I guess, to hear that they do want to move away from horror, but at the same time, it's like I wouldn't want them to feel forced or pigeonholed into making horror, because it's like you say, and we've talked about on the show. Ultimately, the artist should make what they want to make. And I think when you have studios sort of being forced to make games they don't want to make, you end up with Ubisoft. So so yeah, I think it's important that they have the creative freedom and all that kind of stuff. And if they don't want to make Evil Within 3, then it's they shouldn't be forced to make it. But yeah, as a fan, I'm disappointed because Shinji Mikami is a horror legend. He made some of the best horror franchises of all time. I think Evil Within is criminally underrated, and I think it was very punishing, and it was unrelenting, and it's like it doesn't let up. Resident Evil has its sort of, to some degree, like intense moments, super scary moments, and then it has like it'll sort of take the edge off with a more action oriented moment, and then like the save rooms and all that kind of stuff. Even within, it just never let up. So like, I understand maybe why it wasn't as popular as some of the other horror games out there, and also like why completing the game is a rare achievement. I always talk about that. Like when I completed Evil Within on normal difficulty, it popped up that it was a rare achievement. I was like, oh, what, really? That's a rare achievement, but I don't know. So, but I think it's a shame because it is kind of iconic, and it would have filled in a gap in Xbox's lineup if they are going for this sort of diversity and genre diversity. But yeah, sometimes we can't have everything we want, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to, keep the people at the studio, giving them creative freedom is probably the way to go about it, right? Because you don't want
Yeah,
Shinji Mikami to leave.
no,
So it's kind of
very much
like
not.
you don't want to force him to make games that maybe he wouldn't want, and maybe he wants to make something different. So it's like you let him do. He's like, hey, whatever. Here's the money. Just make whatever games you want. So if the studio wants to make games that are non-horror, then so be it, right? Like, why
Yeah,
not? And maybe they can make something
I
really
just hope
cool.
they're good.
Well, yeah, obviously.
They need to be good. That's the kicker, really. They have to be good. And honestly, like I didn't feel like what I played of the Ghostwire Tokyo, like it was intriguing, but it felt a bit messy. The pacing was really strange. I felt like I don't know. Again, there was a sort of sense of unrelenting information being thrown at me. Like it was trying to explain the story to me in the context of the game's world, at the same time as explaining the game mechanics and doing a tutorial. And I was just like, man, this feels kind of strange and messy and disjointed and stuff. And I was like, I played it for about 4 hours before I just got tired of the performance on my PC because it just kept stuttering all the time, and it constantly rains in the game, and the rain was really, really tanking my frame rate. And my PC isn't terrible, it's like RTX 2070 Max Q thingamabob. So it's like it was well within the recommended specs, but it just wasn't running that great. Maybe it needed day one patch or something to sort of push it over a bit. I was just like, man, I can't get into this at the moment. But it was an intriguing concept, and Tokyo looked great. It looked really great, even on medium settings at 1080p. Looked really nice, and the combat was actually quite. Combat was probably the best part of the game because it's sort of like first person, almost melee, but also shooter. Like you shoot finger bullets and cast like magic spells. Then like if you perform like a perfect parry, like Elden Ring, it staggers the enemy, and you can like pop off critical hits and stuff like that. So if you play it on like a higher difficulty, you really have to sort of like pay attention to parries and sort of strategize how you approach every combat situation. Like come up in stealth to get rid of a couple of mobs maybe, and then like use AoE and use the environment and stuff. It was the combat was probably the best part of the game for me so far, but the story delivery was very strange, disjointed. The main character doesn't seem to be too bothered by the fact that he's a ghost or something. Well, that's the thing. I don't even know if he's a ghost or not. The game really didn't give me enough context in the start. I don't know. It was an intriguing game, and I hope, like, when it comes to Xbox, I'll probably give it another go, or if I get a new computer at some point. I don't want to get a better computer. This one's kind of like it's getting on a bit. This one.
Well, I mean, you got a new TV, so now you need a new PC.
Yeah, but I also want to save up for a place, man. Can't be living my girlfriend's parents forever.
Yeah.
I wish I was just a millionaire. Rand, can I have some of your millions?
I mean, I wish I was a millionaire. I mean, that would make things a lot easier, you know. So
Rand, our millionaire.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't made any videos in like 2 months. I'm poor.
Oh man,
super poor. Flame says sunset it. Also, play Reach, Jez. It's generally good. I agree. I really love Halo Reach. I don't know if that'll turn you around in the franchise, but it's one of my favorites. Edward King says, least that needs to happen with 343 that should have happened years ago. Restructure the management and to stop doing short contracts and hire full time. Well, that wouldn't need to be like a change at Microsoft overall with the whole contracting situation. That's not like specifically an Xbox thing. It's like an overall Microsoft thing. So, yeah. So Suicide Squad was also delayed because of the GDC thing, and then they came out and said coming out in spring of 2023. Nobody's surprised because it had already been rumored, and Gotham Knight was coming out this fall, so there's no way they're also launching Suicide Squad. So that is coming out next year. The Quarry was also announced from Supermassive Games. It kind of seems like a spiritual successor to Until Dawn, which was a PlayStation 4 game I loved. And I haven't been the biggest fan of these Man of Medan games. Have you played any of them, Jez?
I haven't played any of them.
The Dark Pictures anthology or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't played any of them myself, but a lot of people like them though. So I don't know.
I did see a lot of people, a lot more recently, talking about, smart delivery and how a lot of games recently aren't using it because of the greed of companies. Like you have 2K, who I believe are publishing The Quarry, because that one has an Xbox One version and then a Series X version for $10 more. And Tiny Tina Wonderlands just came out, and it's interesting because that is not using smart delivery. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful if you're buying Tiny Tina's. Make sure you buy the right version for your console. Because I know a couple people, one of them being Code Eastwood, who downloaded the wrong version and then bought the right version on his PC. Like he downloaded the Xbox One version through the app so it could be ready. But then like when he bought the game on the PC app, he bought the Series X version. But the version he had downloaded was the Xbox One version, which you didn't have access to. So I see a lot of people making that mistake of, essentially not. They assume everything is smart delivery, which everything really should be. But a lot of companies aren't doing that, and it's like there's an Xbox One version for this price, and then a Series X version for this price. So make sure you double check to make sure you're buying the right version, because they can be a little stringent on refunds. Like you could buy the Xbox One version, and obviously it runs on the Series X, and you could play it and then realize this isn't the version you wanted, and then try to get a refund. But Microsoft, if you play it for an extended period of time, sometimes they won't give you a refund. So just be careful about that. That's a public service announcement. Always make sure you're buying the right version, because you definitely don't want to be like, I spent $60 on Tiny Tina's Xbox One, and then I had to buy the $70 version, and they wouldn't refund the $60, so I spent $130 on Tiny Tina. And then you think to yourself, well, Randy Pitchford just loves me, huh? Right? He just made out like a bandit. So yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure. We have some movement on the Xbox Activision deal, Jez. I don't know if you've saw
Yeah, there
some
has
of
been
this.
some movement, yeah.
So the FTC has asked Microsoft and Activision for more information regarding the deal because they're going to, they're going to look at every aspect of the deal. But Activision shareholders are going to be voting, I think this week, potentially, and then we'll find out what the vote was sometime in early March. Now, I think, and the board of directors at Activision are basically urging shareholders to vote yes and to approve the merger and the acquisition because they said if they don't, then the share price is going to, it's going to even crash even further. So, how are you feeling about the this deal, Jez? I know you feel a little. Sometimes when I talk to you, you feel like it's not going to go through. Sometimes I feel, you're a little bit pessimistic about everything. But how are you feeling about it now?
I'm still pretty pessimistic. I think there's a lot of moving parts here, and it's going to be a huge challenge. I don't think it's a done deal. I don't think Microsoft can afford to be complacent about the amount of, I don't know, complexity that they're going to have to deal with. And Microsoft has the best acquisition lawyers in the world because, that is pretty much, they've bought a lot of companies over the last few years. They bought GitHub, they bought, Nuance for $1 million, billion, $1 trillion, and all those deals had to be scrutinized and approved and stuff like that, but none of these companies were publicly traded, as far as I can remember, which does add a lot of complexity. So it's a huge challenge for Microsoft, and a unique challenge for their acquisitions team. But they do have a big acquisitions team, and they do a lot of work with the United States government, from everything from supporting the state to full-blown military contracts and stuff like that. It's not like Microsoft isn't, it's not like Microsoft has the government pissed off or anything right now. They really don't. Microsoft's probably far less scrutinized than your boys like Meta, for example. If Meta tried to buy Activision, I think there'd be a huge amount of scrutiny over it. Because there's a lot of nervousness about Facebook having control of basically the entirety of social media in the whole world. There's a lot of concern about that. But Microsoft has no real footprint beyond entertainment, and the US government is generally feels a bit more lenient towards entertainment acquisitions. And we just saw Warner Brothers and Discovery and Time Warner undergo this massive process, and honestly, that was a huge deal for some very, very big, well-known franchises and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think there's reason to be optimistic, but I also think it's a huge challenge.
And what would happen?
It's going to be an uphill struggle.
What would happen if the Activision shareholders voted against it?
Well, they'd lose a lot of money for the first thing. So it depends. It depends ultimately on the culture. I don't really know how their culture is structured, the shareholders' culture and stuff like that. Could there be some sort of, I don't know, hostile attempt by some big banks or something to cancel this deal and then try and take control of the company somehow, and then try and strip the assets or something? I don't know. This is super complicated, and I have no idea to what extent some of that stuff could even, happen or have an impact. But that's why I'm not being one of these people out there oh, this is a done deal, it's definitely happening. There's not going to be any problems and stuff, because I do think there's a lot of complexity, and there's a lot of room for this to get I don't know, tripped up to some degree maybe. So I don't know. Just have to wait and see.
There's also a lot of people expecting the deal to complete this year, Jez. I've seen a lot of people talking about on social media that the FTC is going to look at it and the Activision shareholders are voting on it, and that people are expecting. I don't know how smart these people are, but they're expecting the deal to close by like July and August, and that like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is supposedly we know is the game coming out this year, that'll launch directly into Game Pass this year. What do you think about that? Like, what do you think of the odds of it actually closing this year? And the odds of, if it did, Modern Warfare 2 launching into Game Pass day one? Because part of me thinks it's unlikely for that to happen, but I'm not
for this year. I think there is an outside chance that it could happen this year. Again, don't have full-blown inside knowledge of the way all this works, but you have to expect that Microsoft wants to get this completed as soon as possible. The rushing it through is gonna make it happen more easily than sort of letting it drag out and stuff. A lot of these big mergers, often they just go through by default because nobody tries to contest them or makes big arguments against them, and they just end up just going through. So maybe that could happen for Microsoft as well, but I feel a bit like this current, FTC and this administration, maybe, people have said that there might be a sort of a willingness for people to try and use this whole event to sort of stake their careers on it and be like, oh yeah, I blocked this merger for the good of the American people. It's, and sort of spin it and politicize it and stuff like that, So there's also that aspect to play into it. It's weird, man. It's a whole weird sort of thing. And also the European Union are also probably going to look at this very closely because Blizzard is a huge employer of pretty much all Blizzard's tech support is in Europe. So like Ireland, France, it's all in Europe. And huge amount of employees. We're talking thousands of employees. Like Blizzard's main customer support services are in Ireland, which is European Union. So it impacts those people, And the European Union, there's a huge meme in the European Union where they're like, "Oh yeah, we need to block legislation about. We need to create legislation to rein in big tech, the big scary technology, And they just passed a law actually. Basically banning Google Analytics, and also they want to make a law forcing Apple to allow interoperability. I can't say that word. But they want like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and iMessage and Skype and all these services to allow for interoperability between the different messaging platforms and stuff. So there's a big push to limit the reach of big tech right now, which I think is going to unfairly put stress on this deal because this is one of the deals that actually is good for consumers. One of the few major big tech publishing acquisitions that I think is good for consumers because if for no reason other than to get rid of Bobby Kotick, So it's sort of, but like I say, it's so complicated and it's so far beyond what I could possibly express as someone with no expertise. I just know how complicated it is, and that's the reason why I don't think anyone should assume that it's a done deal. Because there's so many things can happen, so many damn things. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it would be cool if it happened this year and Modern Warfare 2 came to Game Pass day one, but I don't know, like. I just think that's unlikely, but that's just me. Maybe it does happen. Jacob says, is it time for Xbox to kill off Halo and make another mascot if people don't like Halo? I thought of that. More people leave 343i, more people don't like Halo. They're not going to kill off Halo. As much as Jez wants them to, they're not going to. Jez wants them to make a Gears TV show, He doesn't... He wants Gears to be as popular as Halo, but it's never going to be.
They're making a Fallout TV show, though.
Well, that's because Fallout's huge and it's bigger than Gears.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is coming.
But Rand, there was a pretty major hire for Gears recently.
Was there?
The old lore, the guy who was in charge of Gears lore and writing from back in the day has returned to the Coalition to work on the franchise again. He announced on Twitter yesterday, I believe. So
Well, that's interesting.
that was unexpected. So that to me says the very opposite of them being done with Gears.
Well, I
Right?
mean, they obviously are making
Surely.
Gear 6, so they're not done just yet.
Yeah,
Even though I want
they
that to
don't
be.
hire. They don't. But what if Gear 6 is really good and makes you want more?
Uh, well, okay, we'll have to wait and see. But then again, I'm only the person who plays Gears for the single player. Like I couldn't care less for the multiplayer, and I know it's popular in Brazil and stuff. And Microsoft probably has good reasons to keep the franchise going because it's like super popular in other parts of the world. But like, sometimes you come to an end, and like you just got to move on to something else. Not everything needs to last
I ain't
forever.
a big fan of the multiplayer, man. I like if I find like Halo multiplayer hard, I feel like Gears multiplayer is on a whole nother level of hard. Like Gears multiplayer is so different to anything else I've tried to play. I just cannot get into it, no matter how hard I've tried. The whole wall bouncing thing, like so strange, and it's not really like anything else, But
Yeah.
but
And
I appreciate diversity in games, so
and speaking of
lots of different games
acquisitions,
is a good thing.
since we're talking about the Xbox Activision thing and a lot of things are happening, I'd be interested to see about the shareholders and whether they approve it or not. But Sony bought a new studio this week. They purchased Haven, which was the Jade Raymond studio that she started up after Google
Yeah.
basically shut down their first party development at Stadia, which shocked nobody. Nobody at all when that happened. And
You were not shocked? I was so shocked.
yeah. So
Actually, sorry. Go on.
well, so this is they're located in Montreal. The studio's made up of like 30% of people from Stadia, and the other 66% were people from Ubisoft because that's where Jade worked. Jade also hasn't released a game in like 10 years. It's been like a decade. She's been moving around. Was at EA, but nothing really came out there. She left. I think her Star Wars game was canceled, and then went to Google Stadia, and that fell through. And now she's working at Haven, and they're working on a live service multiplayer game, probably some shooter of some kind, as part of Sony's 10 multiplayer live service games that they want to have launched by 2026.
Yeah.
What did you think of this? Were you surprised about Sony buying a studio before they've even put out a game? I mean, what's your thought process on this?
I imagine they didn't pay much. That's
Probably
my thought
not.
process.
Well,
on
no
that, really.
IP comes with it, right? So I mean, it's just a brand new studio, so they'll probably never be cheaper than they ever would be at this point in time, right?
Yeah. Like if they had a game coming out, if they had a game already, and it was already making money, like Bungie, for example. Bungie would cost a lot of money, but this probably not so much. So maybe Sony, like, they saw what they had in mind for development and thought that's a really cool concept. We can add a lot to this. They need support on the service side. They need servers. They need live ops support and all that stuff. Sony can provide that, and they can also provide them with financial security. So like, this is basically investment, right? They're investing in the company and the potential, and clearly they think there's a lot of potential, and maybe there is, but ultimately we don't know, because like you say, her teams that she's led haven't put a game out in a long time, and
Yeah.
the industry's moved on a lot from the old days. So it
Well,
remains to be seen whether Sony can catch up on the service side, because Microsoft has so much. They're so far ahead in this area. Like, State of Decay and Sea of Thieves, they didn't particularly rate that well on Metacritic, but my God, they have converted a lot of players and deliver a lot of value for the company. Just because they're services, and they've gotten so much better over time, and they've ended up being representing a lot of value for Microsoft, and it only like Halo as well. Like, a lot of people are complaining about Halo right now, but it's done some serious numbers,
I think this is a couple things. Like, one, as you mentioned, they're never been cheaper, right? They haven't released a game yet, so it probably doesn't cost that much to acquire them. Two, you have your first studio in Canada, in Montreal specifically, which is a hub for a lot of video game developers. And as we've heard, there's a big exodus going on at Ubisoft. So it's maybe a good place to do some recruiting for stuff like that. And three, I think this is everything that's going on with Microsoft acquiring all these studios and Embracer and Tencent and everybody just acquiring and gobbling up everything. Just like I saw Netflix just acquired a new studio, right? It kind of has changed the way Sony would like to do business. Because Sony's very much typically, we're going to work with you a couple times to see if you kind of fit in our mold, and then we'll make you the offer. Kind of, what worked with Housemarque and what worked with Bluepoint and stuff like that. But because of Microsoft's acquisition spree and all these other publishers buying up all these studios, it could be just Sony's just like, we can't wait anymore. Because if we wait, somebody else might come in and take it from us. So, I think it changes a lot of things. Because you look at like a company like Deviation Games, who Sony's partnering with on another live service title. They haven't made a game yet. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony bought them, simply because if you don't, and they make something popular, not only is their price going to go up, but then somebody else might want to acquire them, right? Like somebody else might want to step in and be like, we want them. So it's kind of like you need to acquire it almost in a defensive position. So it's going to be interesting how this all kind of plays out, even more once like Microsoft's acquisition of Activision goes through. Because as I've said before, like I don't think they're done buying. They may be done buying right now until this deal goes through, but they're gonna buy once again once it goes through, right, Jez?
Yeah, they're not done. If they do close the deal with Activision, then they're gonna go right back to acquiring stuff. But I saw an interesting thread the other day. Actually, the lead developer of The Long Dark tweeted out some interesting stats and figures, like talking about how Inner Sloth, for example, Inner Sloth were purchased for a few billion, and then like he was posting the Steam stats for Among Us, which is the game's dropped off a lot.
Yes.
And he was speculating that maybe it does numbers on mobile, and I suspect that it does. Yeah, because like if I play Among Us, it's just with mates, on our phones or something usually, or like maybe one of us is on the Xbox and the rest of us are on the phone or something. So I suspect the game is bigger on mobile, but it was still an interesting point to make that it used to be a lot bigger on Steam, and now it isn't. Like after they purchased it for like a lot of money, like how much did Inner Sloth sell for? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a lot of money. And there's speculation that it's like they might never make that money back, So not every deal is a good deal. It might seem like a good deal, and there's a big rush towards these kind of deals right now because obviously the game industry is growing. It's billions. It's bigger than movies and music combined. We talk about this a lot, that it's the biggest entertainment medium, but I think there's reason to be cautious about this because it's still a very high risk business. It's not like every game blows up. You could spend you spend billions on a studio like Inner Sloth, and then maybe the game literally disappears out of trending, the trending tab, and then all of a sudden no one cares about it anymore, and then you're left holding the bag on a massive acquisition that you can't make your money back on. So it's still risky. There's no guarantee that Jade's studio, for example, is going to put out a banger and make a service game that does really well. It could be another Lawbreaker scenario, right? Where it's just like they try and make a game that seems to be a trending thing, and then it just doesn't deliver. Which is why I think like when Halo Infinite does come out with their their next gen Warzone, because everyone keeps saying they need to make a battle royale. I keep hearing this all the time, but I feel like if they make a battle royale and it's just sort of uninspired and it doesn't do anything unique or new or interesting, it kind of just doesn't need to exist. There are already games out there that do this stuff. And if your mentality is we're just going to make a game because it's the genre is popular or whatever, I don't think that's always enough to guarantee success these days. I mean, look at Battlefield's Firestorm mode, for example. Do you even remember what that is? I had to remind myself yesterday that Battlefield 5 had a battle royale mode, and like Fallout 76 had a battle royale mode. And it's like it's not every game needs to have a battle royale mode, but I guess it just remains to be seen ultimately how these games pan out.
Well, yeah, and maybe Sony like what they saw enough where they're like, okay, we'll spend the money on it now, lock them down. But I mean, the live service like category right now is pretty saturated, right? So if you're doing,
he's getting saturated.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing some sort of live service multiplayer game, whether it's battle royale or something else, you're competing with, not just competing with like the new releases, you're also competing with all the franchises that are already established, like your Rainbow Sixes and your Rocket Leagues, your Fortnites and your War Zones and stuff. Like, it's really hard to make an impact when everybody already has kind of carved out their game that they want to play. So,
yeah,
will the game be successful? I mean, I hope it's going to be good. But it's just one of those things. It's kind of just like, just more people being, it seems like almost every week you wake up and somebody's being bought, whether it's Sony buying Haven or Bungie or Xbox buying Activision or Netflix of all people buying somebody, and then Embracer and then Tencent. It seems like it's never going to end until everybody's owned at
everyone
some point.
Owned.
Yeah. So
it is interesting. Like saturation is something that I think about a lot. It's like one of the reasons why I think Elden Ring did really well is because it appealed to a market that isn't so saturated right now, which is a pure video game. There's no service aspect, no multiplayer bullshit. Well, there is multiplayer, but there's no like bullshit. Like there's no store, there's no cosmetics, there's no battle pass and all that stuff. It's just a pure video game, and those are weirdly getting rare. And I thought it was quite interesting that like the Harry Potter devs of that Harry Potter game, they were very vocal about the fact that they are just making a video game. It's not like a service. It doesn't have microtransactions or a battle pass or anything like that. It's just a pure video game. And it's funny how that has become a marketable thing again. Because like Bethesda did their whole protect the single player campaign when it was sort of like, it felt like everyone wanted to make a service at the start of last gen, and like these games as a service term became popularized, and we had Fable trying to be a service and games that had no business being a service trying to become a service, and they all flopped, or a lot of them flopped. But some of them cut through and they actually offered something unique. Like Sea of Thieves is popular because literally no one else does that. Sea of Thieves is the only game that does that well. I know the Ark dev have their sort of Sea of Thieves knockoff. I can't remember what it's called. But
yeah,
nobody cares about that.
Yeah, what is that game called? I totally forgot about it. I think it's on Game Preview on Xbox, but
I can't remember what it's called.
I can't remember either. Shout out to Achievement in the super chat for saying, power washing my car with my Galaxy Pros and noise canceling, listening to you guys, and might I say Starlight Bliss. Thanks for the amazing show, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for the super chat, and we appreciate you very much.
Headset.
Yeah. Supernova says, do we expect the official reveal of Indiana Jones at the next Microsoft conference? What do you think, Jez?
Yeah, I think it probably gets revealed this year. I've heard that Bethesda are doing a lot of heavy lifting on marketing this year, so it sounds to me appropriate that we'd see that game get revealed this year, but I don't know for sure.
Well, I mean, it's already been revealed. I mean, what do you think we're going to get? Like an actual 2-minute CGI trailer or an actual like something like that?
I think we might see gameplay this year. I would expect personally. Don't know for sure, but I guess we'll find
That's the
out.
thing, because there's so much that Xbox can show if they want to, that it's going to be interesting trying to figure out what they will show, because I always kind of do my predictions, and my predictions usually not to brag or anything, but they usually end up being right for the most part. You know what
You
I
mean
mean?
your predictions?
No, like my actual predictions. Um,
Yeah, predictions.
but
That
this
are totally,
year,
totally, totally predictions.
it's like I think there's so much they can show, especially compared to years past, that I know they're not going to want to show everything. So it's going to be tough for me to try to figure out what they want to show versus what they would want to cut and hold for later on. So it's gonna like yeah. Plus they have so many studios now where it's just like okay, well, what about this one, this one, this one? Like people even forget like with Bethesda, yeah, you got Machine Games working Indiana Jones, but you also have ZeniMax Online working on a big new AAA game, and that could potentially be revealed this year. I mean, hell, it is working on something. It's been 2-year anniversary for Doom Eternal. They could easily probably have like a CGI trailer or announcement trailer announcing whatever they're doing next. We already know Tango's working on another game. Are they at a point where they could put something out? I mean, that's just Bethesda. Not to mention like all of Xbox Game Studios. So it's like there's a lot that could potentially be shown off, and it's going to be tough for me to try to like narrow it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is crazy. It's crazy how much stuff they could show, and it kind of I don't know, exacerbates the fact that they're not showing anything. Show something, anything. I need to see something. But
Malice says, can you compare the Haven Sony and the Initiative Xbox approaches in terms of getting studios off the ground and into first party orbit, given the recent the Initiative news? What do you think, Jez? How would you compare both of those? Comparing the Haven and Sony acquisition with the Initiative Xbox approaches in terms of getting studios off the ground and into the first party orbit, given like the recent stuff with the Initiative and everything.
Well, it's interesting because one of the reasons they built the Initiative where they built it was to take advantage of the developer and the contractor culture in Southern California, right? Santa Monica. But that's what I heard, is that Santa Monica has this culture of temp work, basically, where you work on a game and then you go off to another studio to do the next project and stuff. And while a lot of it creates these headlines like, oh my god, all these staff are leaving and stuff, and yeah, we talked about it last week, there is people did leave for legitimate reasons from the Initiative, but there's also a lot of contract work going on around there, so it's sort of like people jump from studio to studio and stuff like that. So the dev culture in Montreal is obviously going to be different to Southern California, and stuff like that. So it's sort of making direct comparisons isn't always totally simple, I guess. But also, we don't really know how it's going to pan out with Sony and Jade Raymond. It's Raymond, right? Not Redmond. Redmond's where Microsoft is.
Yes.
But we don't know how it's going to pan out yet. It might end up, they might end up not making a game, like with EA, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
I think they'll make a game. I mean, like Herman Hull said that like one of the reasons why they wanted to invest was because like they're actually like ahead of schedule, which is not normal for the video game industry. So I think they'll make a game. I think you have two different approaches here. Like Haven seems to be more like how new studios are made in general, where it's like a bunch of friends who work together making a new studio, right? So everybody's kind of already worked with each other or know each other, so you can sort of build that company bond, that company culture really quickly. Where I felt like the Initiative was more like almost an experiment, where it wasn't like Darryl Gallagher came in and hired a whole bunch of people from Crystal Dynamics that he worked with. He came in there and was like hiring people from Rockstar and Naughty Dog and Sony Santa Monica, like all the talent within that area, instead of like hiring people that he was familiar with. At least that was the sense that I got, where Haven was made up of people who worked with Jade at Google Stadia and also people that she worked with at Ubisoft. So like it seemed like people had worked with each other. They know each other. They know how everybody operates and how the workflow is, versus the Initiative, which kind of like it almost seemed like they were trying to bite off more than they can chew, and it just kind of ended up
Yeah.
failing to a regard.
I kind of get that impression too.
Yeah, I guess like I don't know. I guess like maybe like uh, wouldn't I don't know. I wouldn't compare Haven and Sony to Initiative and Xbox. I would compare like Haven and Sony to like Playground and Xbox, where
Oh yeah,
where like
that makes sense.
where Bizarre Creations closed, a bunch of people from Bizarre who Microsoft had worked with, they went and they formed Playground Games, and Microsoft like signed their first game with Forza Horizon, and then obviously after a few of their games, Microsoft purchased them. So I kind of view those more as the same, where like you have friends at a studio, something happens, you leave, you headhunt your friends, they come to join, you build your own studio, and that's kind of the way I look at it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the games industry, so maybe I'm completely wrong on that aspect. But um, yeah. Speaking of Sony, I don't know if you saw this, Jez. Uh, Spartacus, the Game Pass killer, is supposed to be revealed next week, according to Bloomberg, and supposed to be launching sometime in early April, potentially. And there was even quote unquote a leak of the pricing tiers that hit Reddit and Twitter today. I don't know if you saw those at
Yeah, I
all.
did see those. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all the of Spartacus finally coming out? What are your expectations for it? Like it's a week. We're going to be getting it next week, maybe on a Tuesday. What are your expectations for it?
Well, for PlayStation fans, I hope it actually delivers good value. But from what we've all heard, it's not going to have day one Sony games, is it? Sort of going to
At
be more
least at
like EA
least
Play,
at
right?
least at launch it won't. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, at least in the initiative phase, it's kind of like it doesn't really, for me, give the same kind of value that Xbox Game Pass does. Like, Xbox Game Pass, it's kind of like Netflix in that it gives you this sort of there's an expectation attached to Game Pass. I know all of these games from Microsoft are Xbox Game Pass originals, much like you got your Netflix originals. And I really do think Microsoft needs to ramp up its marketing around that and brand its games as Xbox originals or something to reflect to piggyback on the expectation that Netflix sets with its shows. Because when Sony comes out with its differentiator, which is kind of like they're going to be banking on other ways to deliver value. I think Microsoft would be smart to sort of play up the fact that you do get all these games, all of Microsoft's originals, Starfield, Elder Scrolls, and Fallout, and whatever. When those games do eventually come out, they should start working on ramping up that aspect of the marketing and the value proposition. But I don't know. Ultimately, it's sort of it remains to be seen to what extent they actually do compete directly with each other. Like maybe there's a chance Sony's business model works better. Maybe it's more profitable. And maybe the reason Microsoft doesn't emphasize this guarantee that all the games will be day and date in there is because they're thinking maybe one day we won't be able to do this anymore. Maybe Microsoft thinks like one day maybe it won't be profitable to put the games in their day and date, especially if Sony doesn't do that and they find that they have more profitability and success. And maybe Microsoft thinks we can deliver value in other ways without necessarily cannibalizing our retail sales. But Microsoft also put out a ton of data to suggest that Game Pass doesn't cannibalize retail sales anyway, and can actually like enhance them through the viral marketing aspect and that kind of stuff. I don't know ultimately, and nobody knows how this is all going to play out because at the end of the day, this is all an experiment. Microsoft's constantly changing the way they do things. They're constantly looking at the data, adapting things, and changing things on the fly. Like they didn't market the fact that Tunic was going to be in Game Pass, even though that deal must have been done at least a few weeks ago, at least. So maybe that's an experiment for them. Like, does Game Pass, if we don't announce it, does it help or hinder or affect the sales or whatever? In what way? And they'll look at all that data and start collating it and stuff. So it's interesting to think about some of that stuff.
Yeah, so the stuff that was going around on social media today was PlayStation Plus Neo. It says PlayStation Now will merge with PlayStation Plus on April 7th. Choose a 1, 3, or 12-month recurring plan for each tier. And there's 4 tiers here, right? And initially when I looked at this, I was just like, this doesn't look right to me. The boxes seem off. It definitely seems like a Photoshop. But, some people are like,
Yeah.
oh, if this is real, then, they screwed themselves. You got PlayStation Plus Bronze, which is online play and free game demos for $10 every 3 months, which, would be like $40 or whatever, right? PlayStation Plus Silver for online play, free game demos, and game streaming for $30 every 3 months. PlayStation Plus Gold, which is online play, free game demos, game streaming, monthly free games, and monthly store discounts for $40 every 3 months. And then PlayStation Plus Platinum, online play, free game demos, game streaming, monthly free games, monthly store discounts, exclusive offers at the PlayStation Store, access to select PS3, PS4, and PS5 titles streaming for $60 every 3 months. I would say I'm gonna go out and sound a limb and say this is all just fake. I can't see this being the pricing, let alone the tier structure, at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think this someone's just trying to like catch on to the hype, the train, trying to get their 15 minutes of fame because they know it's being revealed. But, I mean, from everything that we've heard, it definitely seems more like this is just them merging PlayStation Now into PlayStation Plus, really. And with no first-party games being day and date, at least at launch. Who knows in the future? Because something like Jade Raymond's Haven game, if that's a live service multiplayer game, like that is a game you probably want in a subscription service, right?
Yeah,
like
I would say so.
So, like, sure, maybe a God of War Ragnarok. Maybe, you don't want that in there, but like if you're doing a live service game and the whole point of a live service game is to have as many people as possible play your game so you can have the biggest user base as possible, potentially spending money on microtransactions, it seems like those would be the biggest candidates not only to be in a subscription service day one, but also being on PC day one. And we know that Haven is also making a game for PC. So while like they may not, God of War may not be in Spartacus day one or whatever, but these live service games, I think there's a good chance those could not only launch in the subscription service, but also launch on PC day one, because the whole point is you want as many people as possible playing the game and spending money. So we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out, but I would not be surprised if that was the case. Because
I think the chip shortage as well is definitely going to have an impact on Sony's willingness to support PC. Because, like, in a world where they can't manufacture enough PlayStations to get them into people's hands, and then a world where Microsoft is basically like, yeah, all our games are on PC, day and date, no problem. Sony's leaving money on the table, ultimately. And, we've seen games like Horizon hit the top of the Steam charts relatively easily, even in busy months with, games like competing against games like Elden Ring did really well. And obviously From Software has a massive install base and fan base on PC, and even bigger now thanks to the popularity of Elden Ring. It still held its own, in a better period, in a quieter month. Horizon probably would have done even better, and Sony has to look at some of that data,
Yeah.
Not Horizon, sorry. God of War, and the games they did put on PC. They put Horizon 1 on PC, but
have you heard anything? Have you heard anything about Spartacus?
I have, actually I have, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what was said, and I need to try and find the information. But someone did come to me with some information about Spartacus. Like, one of the things I was told that it was coming in June, which obviously contradicts today's information that it's coming in April. So maybe the information I got wasn't accurate anyway. But I don't know. If they do announce that it's coming in June, then that sort of adds credence to my information that I got, which means, No,
Well,
no, it's all going to be revealed
if it's
anyway.
being
Soon,
revealed
so.
next week, I can't see them holding off until June to have it come out. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
guess we'll
guess.
find out next week. We'll talk about what we think of what they're offering. Achievement in the super chat says, if Haven ships something before the Initiative, Rare, or Playground, that's going to look bad on Xbox or even Matt Booty's part. I mean,
Mm,
Playground's, I don't know. Playground's released five Forza Horizon games. Yeah, they're taking their time on Fable. Rare, they put out Sea of Thieves, and they're taking their time on Everwild. Maybe it looks bad on the Initiative because the Initiative was built in 2018, whereas Haven I think was built last year. So maybe that looks bad if Perfect Dark is not out by the time Haven ships their game. That might look bad, but I don't know about the other ones. It's not like Rare didn't put out Sea of Thieves and it continues to update the game like every 3 months with new seasons and stuff. Playground just, I mean, they're gonna put out another Forza Horizon in 3 years and have a Fable game out. So I think maybe it looks bad for the Initiative. I don't know. Do you think differently on this one, Jez? Or
I don't know. It's every game's different, so it's kind of like, you know, ultimately, until the games actually come out and we know what the scope of them are, it's hard to like say like, is this right and stuff. You know, people said they didn't want Microsoft to do crunch culture, and this is what happens when you don't do crunch culture.
yeah,
Can
that's
you have
true.
can you have a big AAA? Can you have games launching rapidly and super rapidly without super crunch? Crazy hours, workloads, and stuff like that. Is it possible? I don't know because I'm not a game dev, and I've certainly not shipped a game in a crunch culture environment. So I don't know. If you are a game dev listening to this stuff and you want to talk about it and let me know. My DMs are open, but I you can't have one or the other. I kind of feel like if you want to work your devs to death, so you can have a game every couple of years, a big game like a Naughty Dog kind of scope, then maybe the downside is that it's long hours to work and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Gamer by Choice says it's nice to know games are coming out, but after that, I really don't need much information on the game until I can pre-order and gameplay. Content creators may want more information shared. Great show. And Jack Cass says Xbox Game Pass should have a place something button. Too many choices. I believe it increases player involvement. I actually do think they have that randomized button where you can press and it'll play something random from Game Pass or something random
Yeah,
that
they
you have
do.
installed from Game Pass. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they do. They do have this random choose something random. It's in the game library, and it's if you're on PC, it's in the Game Pass app. So they do have something akin to that.
See,
That's
Humdrum
exactly what you want, but
Humdrum says, I'm going to be straight up honest. I don't care if devs crunch. Doesn't impact me. And it's like I said last week. Most people, they don't care how the hot dog is made. They don't want to know how the hot dog's made.
yeah.
They just want the hot dog. They just want this. They don't care how stuff is made. So it's just like, just give me the end
Well,
product.
that's one reason. That's one reason why Microsoft's buying so many studios. Is because if you have lots of studios to the point where you can have a big game every quarter without crunch, then that's the holy grail, right?
Yes, that is the
Isn't
holy
it? I
grail.
would have
Yes.
thought.
So you can
I mean, we don't we
keep
don't
people at the studios. Have them actually want to stay there instead of burning themselves out. Right.
Yeah. Um, but I don't actually know what their plan is for some of this stuff. I don't know if how hardcore they are thinking about being anti-crunch, because I'm sure like if someone wanted to work 40 hours a week, it's not like they'd be like, no, don't do that. You know. Um, I'm sure my company certainly doesn't stop me working 40 hours a week. Although not a week. I'm contracted for 40 hours, but like I work weekends as well, and they don't stop me from doing that. So
Yeah.
40 hours a week is probably a standard working week, but like some of these devs talk about crunching like 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So
GDC was also this week, and Microsoft talked a little bit about Game Pass. Sarah Bond, Phil Spencer had like a round table, and some of the things that Phil said was that he gets this question a lot from developers that if you're not in the Game Pass, then it's not viable to be on Xbox. Phil said, I also want to make clear to people out there that are out there that for us at Xbox, there's not just one business model that we think is going to win. I often get asked by developers, if I'm not in a subscription, am I just not viable on Xbox anymore? And it's absolutely not true. Like, we look at retail of people selling games, buying games. It's an important part of our profit and loss statement. You know that. And it's something that we invest resources in to enable our developers to do great work there. And this is where I sometimes contrast against other forms of media that we get compared to, whether it's music, whether it's video, and the models have really condensed down to maybe one or two business models that are working. I fundamentally believe a strength for us in video games business is the diversity of business models and the strength of those. Definitely in Team Xbox, we invest in business models that developers are asking for and ensuring that those are flourishing so that every year we see great new experiences that come to our platforms that might never have been built if the business model capability wasn't there on our platform. Do I want or do I envision everybody who's on Xbox being a Game Pass subscriber? I don't. I want people to make their own choice. Some people want to buy all the games we ship and create their own library. And subscriptions give you a good continual revenue stream, and that's an important thing for any business. On top of spikes that you'll get around certain retail releases. That's why I talk about it really being a mix of things. It's not about one muscling out the other. And then ID at Xbox came out and said that they've paid out like $2.5 billion in revenue to independent creators, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I think they last reported was like $500 million in 2017 or whatever, or 2018. Yeah, so they talk about all this. They even released some graphs where Game Pass members are willing to invest in their experiences by saying members spend 50% more than lookalike users. But then again, like, what's a lookalike user? I don't really know. And spend is higher across all types of transactions. So a Game Pass user will spend 60% more on games, 40% more on add-ons, and 45% more on consumables. Members try new games. Members play games across 30% more genres after joining Game Pass. Xbox Store research shows gamers often settle into a handful of familiar franchises and genres. In addition, 90% of members tell us they've played games they otherwise wouldn't have tried without Game Pass. Game Pass has contributed to the growth of independent developers and publishers, like I mentioned, ID at Xbox, and they showcase the growth from 2016 to 2020, which is good to see. And that members explore more games. Members play 40% more titles after joining Game Pass, which I don't know. Most of these like graphs and stuff they've talked about at GDC of stuff they've already mentioned before, right? So none of that's really new. But it's just kind of going to reinforce that, like, Game Pass is not only beneficial for Xbox, but potentially beneficial to you, whether it's like the big third-party games or from, big AAA third-party games or like the indie games or for the games that have microtransactions and stuff that people will go and spend money on it, considering they don't have to buy the games, right? Well, I know you were on vacation, but did you read any of this stuff from Phil or any of the graphs that came out from it?
I didn't. I was on, like I say, I was on vacation, so I missed a lot of this stuff, and as a result, I sort of, I don't have a huge amount of feedback to offer on that stuff, but I don't know. It sounds like it sounds like to me they have a lot of criticism and maybe skepticism and nervousness from some of their devs about what it means to be if they're not in Game Pass and stuff, and whether that's fair or not. I don't know, because I don't, I haven't seen the balance sheet of every dev out there. There's like some devs who just aren't on Game Pass and they're never on Game Pass, and they don't want to be on Game Pass for whatever reason, or they haven't been invited to be on Game Pass. But I don't know. It sounds like they want to sort of reduce some of these concerns with some of the stats they put out, but at the same time, it's like if you're not invited to be in Game Pass, you can't just be in Game Pass. You sort of like, I'm sure Microsoft will engage with the dev about whether or not they can be in Game Pass, but a lot of the time they're just sort of like, I think that Microsoft will approach the dev first, and be like, yeah, we want your game in Game Pass and whatever and stuff like that. So I don't know. It would be interesting to find out how a dev actually gets into Game Pass in the first place, and to what extent they can opt into it. Because obviously Microsoft pays upfront money for that stuff.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, I wonder how many people, like, the questions you get from developers. I think it's an interesting question that Phil leads off the whole thing with, like, developers coming to him and asking if, like, we're not in the subscription service, are we just not viable on Xbox? Because that would imply that, there's some developers speaking to other developers being like, yeah, like, if you're not in Game Pass, then, like, nobody's gonna buy your stuff on Xbox, which is a fear that I see some people talk about on Twitter. Like, is Xbox training their users to wait for games to come to Game Pass and not buy them directly, right? Like, look at like a recent big release, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Came out for $60 around, I think it was October, but all you had to do was wait 4 months and you can play it on Game Pass through your subscription. Not to mention, like, all the first, day one, indie games that launch in the service. Is there some concern that Xbox users aren't buying games anymore and they're just waiting for Game Pass titles? And I think, part of the reasons why Xbox releases this information is to show that that's not the case. And in fact, like, you actually get more engagement if you're all these different things. And that, I don't know, it's I think it's also,
I think it's really important. The most important thing that Phil said, the best thing he said, was that there's no single business model for us. And if you look at Microsoft, that is literally their entire company ethos. Like, if you look at companies like Netflix and Spotify, their entire business revolves around one specific thing. Like, Netflix revolves entirely around movie streaming, which is why they're trying to diversify a little bit by looking at games acquisitions they can make. And Spotify revolves entirely around music. They have no other aspect to their business, Whereas Microsoft is like this octopus where they've got like the cloud, they've got Windows PC, they've got patent licensing, they got security and business apps, and they've got the whole developer platform, GameStack and Azure, and they've got loads and loads of different things. So Phil's just applying the Microsoft model of being a diverse business and meeting people where they are to the Xbox business. So they're going to keep making consoles for people who want consoles. They're going to do subscription services for people who want subscription. They're going to do cloud services for people who don't want a console. They're going to bring their games to PC for people who don't want the cloud or a console. And, that's why, like, when a lot of these analysts have said, like, oh, Microsoft's going to stop making consoles, they fundamentally show a misunderstanding of the whole Microsoft mission, which is to meet people where they are, no matter where they are. One single part of the business isn't super profitable, it doesn't matter, because they've got all these other business models that maybe are more profitable, and they can sort of, look at the margins on one business and be happy with that, and then like accept lower margins on another part of the business, which is why I think they do Gears of War. Like, Gears of War might not be as popular as it once was in Europe and America, but it's still very popular in South America and some other places. So where Microsoft might be think like an analyst brain will probably be thinking like, oh well, they should just get rid of Gears of War because it's not as popular as Halo. But that's not how Microsoft thinks. It's like, look at State of Decay. State of Decay didn't do that well on Metacritic, and it probably didn't sell that many copies. But the fan base is stuck with the game and in perpetuity, and they've got like a nice little community there. So like the margins on the game might not be amazing, but they clearly drive some engagement in Game Pass, and it sort of becomes a piece of a wider sort of whole, you know. And I think that's good, you know, to not to want to restrict your business to one business model. Is one thing that makes me nervous about my company is that we focus entirely on Google SEO, and Microsoft, Google could one day a piece of EU legislation could drop one day and just ban Google from passing, you know, search traffic or something, and it kill our business overnight because we don't have any diversity in the business model, you know. So that's Microsoft being smart, but it's also good for consumers as well because it means like they're not gonna force us to give up our consoles. They're not gonna force us to play a console. They're gonna meet you where you are, and I think that's a good way to be if you're a big company.
Indeed. TB, who's been a member for 6 months, says, have they given a release date for Scalebound? Is Game Pass sustainable? Are Activision games going to be exclusive? Love the show, lads. Yes. All these... It wouldn't be an Xbox 2 episode without a mention of Scalebound, of course. And of Game Pass being sustainable. Oh, man. Love those topics, indeed. Onyx says, I feel like Sony needs to do Ragnarok Day 1 on PlayStation and PC just to try and see at this point they should just to try and see at this point, they just dumb after Elden Ring's success on PC. Yeah, part of Elden Ring's big success is the whole PC side of things. Microsoft has also seen a lot of success on PC as well. I think Sony's taking, they're taking, you know, like kind of they're putting their like big toe into the sauna, into the pool, and being like, we were going to do this, but we don't want to jump in right away, so we're just kind of ease ourselves in, right? So maybe they feel like God of War isn't the best game to do that with, but they'll do it with Last of Us 2 multiplayer or something, or one of these live service games where, you know, the whole business model is we need as many people playing as possible, so let's launch it day 1 on PC. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if Sony is looking at like what happened between Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West, where Elden Ring came out and the discussion surrounding Horizon Forbidden West just completely died off, and taking a look at like the sales metrics of both and being like, maybe we should have launched this game day 1 on PC. How much more, you know, how many more sales would we have gotten if we did this day 1 on PC instead of waiting 6 months to a year? Because the more people playing the game, the more people talking about it, right? Elden Ring is like dominated.
There's no downside.
Well, I mean, like the downside is what to them probably the downside would be, hypothetically, they would not sell as many consoles as they could, but they can't even produce any consoles right now. I know, right? So, what would have been the downside?
In a different market, in a different era, then yeah, they should probably think about it. Like, how will this affect PlayStation sales? But man, it's gonna be years before they can meet demand on that shit. Well, years.
You also got to figure, you know, it's just like, you know, these ports of games just don't happen magically. Maybe like they already had it in their production pipeline of like, all right, Horizon Forbidden West, we're on PS5, and then, you know, it wasn't planned, you know, for the PC version to come out for a year, and you know, it just wouldn't have been ready anyways. You know what I mean? Like the PC version wouldn't have been ready to launch alongside of it. So it was just kind of like, all right, whatever. But, you know, it just, because I saw a lot of people talking, like even yesterday I saw like someone from Xbox talk about it who probably shouldn't have tweeted it. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, like the Elden Ring just basically sucked the air out of the room for everything. Like that was the only game people wanted to talk about. It was the only game that was being talked about on YouTube. Like you said, you had your traffic on your website, Windows Central, which is predominantly Xbox focused. You were pulling up major views on Elden Ring articles, right? More so than
Dude, our traffic doubled. It
doubled.
doubled
Yeah.
on Elden Ring alone. And our focus isn't Xbox. Our focus is Windows.
Well, Windows,
And
but I
most of
mean,
our traffic is
you know what I mean
most
by
of our
that.
traffic is Windows related. Like historically, it's not gaming. Like gaming historically was something we did on the side at Windows Central. But times have changed, and gaming has become such a huge force across everything. Like Windows Central's traffic has flipped from being like huge. I mean, it's still pretty big on the Windows side, but the amount of traffic we get through gaming is just been huge now. And part of that is because of how well Xbox has been doing too.
Yeah. I don't really see any downside to launching your game on PC day one. I think it only benefits it.
Yeah, there's no downside in my view.
So, yeah. The other thing that kind of happened at GDC was Xbox announced a new publishing division, Jez, a new cloud publishing division led by Kim Swift, who joined last year as the cloud gaming director, and she was the project lead and designer of Portal before working as a designer on Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. And recently she was game design director at Stadia, but obviously, Stadia, so people leave. And she joined Xbox. And it sounds kind of like Xbox is giving her this new cloud gaming organization, which, according to Microsoft, the division works with studios to develop cloud-native titles and brings them exclusively to the Xbox ecosystem. Swift explained that the division's mandate is to partner with world-class game development teams to develop cloud-native games to bring unprecedented experiences to players that can only be achieved with cloud technology. So what do you think about this? Is this kind of like the future? Cloud native games? I mean, because you have a lot of publishing divisions at Xbox now. You got Xbox Game Studios that Matt Booty runs, the 15 studios, right? From 343, the Coalition, all the way down to Ninja Theory and Obsidian, right? You have Bethesda's publishing arm and their studios. Presumably you're going to add Activision's publishing arm when this deal goes through. You also have Xbox Global Publishing, which does stuff with like independent studios, like Avalanche's Contraband, as does Falls. You've talked about Project Dragon with IO Interactive and all these other projects that you and Jeff Grubb leak every other week. But now there's going to be another division within Xbox, I think within Global Publishing, of cloud gaming, which, wants to bring these cloud-first titles to Xbox. What do you make of this?
I need to look into this more before I can give a full picture on it. I'll probably write about it next week. But I do remember one of the things that was written was something kind of like, we're still not sure what this looks like. And that's really the kicker, isn't it? The only introduction we've had really to cloud native games is Crackdown, which was pretty much an unmitigated disaster. So I'd say cloud native games have a lot to prove from moving beyond the buzzwords context, and then it's kind of like they say, well, what is a cloud native game? Is World of Warcraft a cloud native game? The whole game runs on servers. You can't play it offline. Everyone's connected to a dedicated server. So is that a cloud native game? Is that what a cloud native game looks like? All the aspects of WoW are on the cloud. Like I can access the auction house on my phone. I can send my minions, like World of Warcraft has an Assassin's Creed Brotherhood kind of system where you can send minions on little missions and shit. I can do that off my phone. Is that a cloud native game? If that is what cloud native game represents, then they already exist. Why do we need a separate publishing division for it? So there's a lot of weird questions about this. And I guess one of the aspects of it is maybe marketing for Azure Game Stack, which is what GDC is often really oriented around, is pushing Azure Game Stack, which is obviously makes Microsoft a lot of money, and it's one of the things that funds the Xbox division ultimately. Is the Azure Dev platform, which is good for us because it means Xbox stays profitable, and shareholders are happy because it means that they can boast about all the cloud stuff that they do and how much money all that shit makes. But on the flip side, what the hell does a cloud native game mean? How exactly is it any different? How exactly is it any different from what we've already got? So there's that thing that I'm slightly confused about, and it's one thing that I might ask. I might hit Microsoft and ask them, just literally ask them outright. Can you give me some real sort of information on what this actually means? Because as far as I can tell, it's still all just a load of buzzwords, for better or worse. So I'm interested, and it's a good thing that they are trying to explore this, but does it mean anything really? I don't know. Does it mean we'll get good games? I have no idea. I want to believe that it means good games, but so far our only example is Crackdown, which is not a great game. So I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Someone needs to figure out what this looks like.
Yeah, PixelBitG says, isn't Flight Sim considered cloud native? I believe
exactly.
That's
the thing.
Yes. No, I think...
Well, that's the thing. They talk about cloud native when it suits them, really. Like they'll say Minecraft's a cloud native game. Is it a cloud native game? I mean, I guess, but it's all strange and
well, a cloud native.
It
says a cloud native games use the cloud to process certain parts of the game, such as physics, lighting, environments, or AI. This has a number of potential uses, such as freeing up processing power in a home console, or making sure that players joining an online world can get all the same synchronized experience.
But the games do that already, like World of Warcraft.
Yeah, so Swift said that cloud gaming's still in its infancy. At the time when Netflix
it's not.
Well,
World of Warcraft's a million years old.
I'm just saying, this is what she said. At the time when Netflix was formed, internet speeds were not what they needed in order to send packets fast enough to support streaming, so instead, they sent physical packets in the mail in the form of DVDs, and they had to wait for technology to catch up with their vision, but they were ready for it. Swift says she sees the future of cloud gaming falling into 3 separate categories: ubiquity, cloud AI, and runtime calculations. According to Swift, ubiquity, the ability to stream games on any device, even though that wouldn't be powerful enough to run them natively, is the low-hanging fruit for cloud content. Cloud AI, meanwhile, will advance what developers can do by using technology like machine learning, natural language processing, and reinforcement learning. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. I guess, we need to learn more because, it wasn't like there was any, games given as an example or anything, just kind of like, oh, here's what we're doing. We got a new division, and who knows when we would see any of this stuff. So,
This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like cutting through the buzzwords and finding the meat. When you're telling me a cloud native game is in its infancy, but World of Warcraft is literally that, and World of Warcraft's coming up to 20 years old, man. It's always been dedicated servers since the game launched. Is that a cloud native game? I don't know. Does cloud native mean that it's also a streaming game or what? Oh man. That's why I'm still skeptical about what exactly this stuff means, because it does seem to me like a lot of buzzwords which doesn't mean anything for the end user at the moment. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with cloud games.
Yeah, fair enough.
World of Warcraft does all that shit. It does all that shit. It ticks all those boxes. I don't
know. Let's see. New Witcher game was announced, Jez.
Yeah, it was. What do you think about this?
Which is ditching their engine and using Unreal Engine 5, which I thought was interesting.
The Red Engine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised they're going back to Witcher. I mean, it's their moneymaker. It's their breadwinner. I am surprised they're using Unreal Engine 5, though. And it's also another game that's announced in a blog post. Like, there seems to be so many of these games recently just announced in a tweet or blog post. Normally, something like this is announced in a CGI trailer at someone's showcase, but it seems like the hiring for these games is you need to announce them beforehand. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Like, so
I tell
many.
you what it is. I think it's the hybridized work model. Like before, you could hire people and you bring them into your office, and then they live in your office, and you can control the information. Get them sign NDAs and do all that kind of stuff. I mean, you'd still do that remotely, but I feel like it's harder to control information when you're working with a load of remote workers who are probably contractors and stuff like that. Like, you can't issue them company hardware, company devices, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of like it makes it harder to control information, which I suppose has an effect on how you can actually just announce your games. Like, do you even bother trying keeping it secret at that point, or do you just wait for a contractor to intentionally or even accidentally just leak it through their setup? So I think that's where a lot of this comes from, probably. But I don't know.
It'd be interesting to see
But what do you think about
about
why
what.
do you think it's weird that they're dishing Unreal?
I don't
What's
know.
your
Why
take on
would they
that?
be ditching Unreal? Or why would they be ditching their own engine
Dishing.
to run
It's
to run
red.
Unreal?
Their engine's called the Red Engine, if I remember correctly.
Maybe, I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe Epic wants to show developers that Unreal can do open world games. And what's bigger open world
Yeah,
game than Witcher?
I think there's a perception in the industry that the Unreal Engine can't do open world games because of the way it streams assets and stuff. Um, a developer told me recently that the Witcher engine is way better at sort of streaming assets for an open world game than Unreal Engine 4 was. But now we're on Unreal Engine 5, and it was no accident that that Matrix thing was an open world demo, the Unreal Engine 5 demo, because they want to change the perception that Unreal Engine can't do open world and it can't do asset streaming. And Gears of War 5, sorry, had those open world sections, but they're very, very small. And the reason they were small is because Unreal Engine can't handle anything bigger, and they had to have these massive doors, which were basically loading screens. And as you traveled around the semi-open world area, you hit these loading screens that were like either these massive doors or those sections where you slowly squeeze through an opening and stuff like that. It's That's all on the Unreal Engine, but supposedly the new Unreal Engine is better at it. So I suppose there are a couple of aspects to this. First of all, I think probably the Witcher team lost a lot of its devs that were responsible for the Red Engine, and after the Cyberpunk debacle, and probably for them, offloading some of that technological stuff to our friends at Epic Games, it might just be a pure cold logic thing where it's like, well, we lost a lot of our architects. I mean, this is speculation, by the way. I don't know if this is the case, but like, if you're them and you're thinking like, do we hire people back who can do this stuff, or do we just partner up with Epic Games and they get to market their engine and we get expertise out of the box and stuff? And maybe the studio's changed so much that having expertise with a sort of a more agnostic engine is probably a better way forward. Because like if you lost people who've got specific experience with your engine and you have to train them up on an engine they never used before, then it becomes a problem. But if you switch into the Unreal Engine, a lot of devs are probably trained on that because they learned that at university and they learned it at other game dev studios and stuff. It's just the engine that's out there. So if you're having to hire new people because you lost half your staff because you nearly blew up your own company. Um, I'd say, that's probably an aspect to it as well. But it is a bit weird, but I guess it's also not weird when you think about some of those aspects. But I don't know. It is what it is, and ultimately, at the end of the day, the engine doesn't matter because as long as we get a good game out of it. But I feel also at the same time, I feel like it adds risk because you have sort of like State of Decay, for example. They switched from the CryEngine to the Unreal Engine, and they weren't familiar with it, and it really shows. And also, BioWare famously switched from its in-house engine to the Unreal Engine for Mass Effect 1, and Mass Effect 1 is not the most performant Unreal Engine game in the world. But then you go to Mass Effect 2, and the difference is truly gargantuan. Like the difference in quality after they got some experience with the engine and hired more people with experience with the engine was really big. So like obviously there runs the risk of like, will switching engine affect the quality of the game? We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it with Battlefield, not Battlefield, sorry. We saw it again with BioWare being forced to use the Frostbite engine, which is why the next Mass Effect is on a real engine again. And so I don't know. But at the end of the day, if there's a good game comes out of it, that's all that matters for us as end users. And
so
time will tell.
Who's going to be the main character? Because that wasn't that was the Lynx. That wasn't a wolf.
So House of the, what is it? Because like the different Witcher schools, you got like the school of the wolf and school of the something else and school of the whatever, and then like the school of the lynx seems to have been created for the games. Like I don't think that was in the books, so that's like a new thing. So it might even just be new characters completely, or maybe it like handles new characters, new areas, parts of the world that haven't been explored in the games yet. There's like a huge amount of lore they could tap into with the Witcher books. And obviously, they probably want to seek some differentiation from the TV show, maybe potentially. Obviously, they've got exclusive rights to use the license for the games, which the author's famously not super happy about. But it's interesting to think what they could do with it, because there's loads of stuff they could do with it potentially, and I guess it's going to be a long time before we see it, though. I would expect. But I want to know, where's the Cyberpunk DLC, man? And they've done a lot of good work on Cyberpunk, and it's now in what I would call a complete. I've recommended the base game on PC, but even on Xbox now, I think it's in a completely, optimal state, and it's still way better than most open world games out there. And if you haven't played Cyberpunk, I think, and you're on Xbox, I think now's the time. But I kind of wanted the DLC for Cyberpunk as well. I want more features too, like transmog system. Oh God, that game needs a transmog system so bad.
But you and your love for Cyberpunk.
What can I say? I like good games. It's a damn good game.
Yeah, I can imagine this Witcher game's probably a few years out, right? So
yeah, 3 years maybe.
Yeah.
Will we even be here in 3 years? Around? Will we still be doing the show in 3 years?
I mean, do the people want us to still be doing the show in 3 years from now?
I mean, yeah, that's ultimately it. If they want us to do it,
we're almost approaching our 5-year anniversary. We started like April of 2017,
Jeez.
and that's next month. It'll be 5 years.
Anniversary.
Do people want the Xbox 2 to go on for another 3 years? I don't know. But yeah. I think that's where we're gonna end the show for today. Thank you guys for being here, and whether you're lurking, chatting, or sending super chats, we appreciate you. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out, and if you have any questions, make sure to
smash that like button.
Yeah, make sure you put any questions you want us to answer in the chat, and we will do our best. And don't forget, code XB2 at manscaped.com for 20% off everything, free shipping if you want to treat yourself or a friend. Michael Mooney in the super chat says, imagine a console sharing resources to power a co-op game, then scale that game to run over multiple servers without any negative impact or performance. That's a cloud game. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. What does that even mean? I don't. I guess we'd have to see it being done because it's just to me that's just like okay, well, that sounds interesting, but like what's the
It's like
benefit? What's the
what does it
benefit
mean
for
for the
me?
end user? And what is the benefit of taking off native computers? Like, have to see some of that stuff. I mean, they always said that Titanfall's AI creeps were, the AI for those were offloaded to the cloud, but did it actually matter that much? It's hard to say because in a way, it's kind of like if the cloud's doing its job, then it's seamless. You don't know it, I guess. But then it makes it almost weird that it's being announced that it's its own thing. I don't know. It's strange and unknowable, kind of like an NFT. You know,
Yeah.
we should sell
Um,
some Xbox Two NFTs around.
we should. We definitely should.
Well, yeah.
Let's see what else we got here. Whittier says, "Do you have any books inside? Do you have any books inside of you want to write?" No, not really. I'm not a very creative person, so like, I don't really have. I don't know. Like any of the stories I would think of are probably way too inspired by the stories I've read they wouldn't be really unique. But no, I've never actually thought about writing a
I,
story or anything. So,
I actually wrote a book once
oh really?
when I was it was more like a novella, I guess. It was like 80 pages long. I was about 12 years old, and basically it was a rip-off of Resident Evil 3.
No, okay.
Consciously or not, it was conscious. It had Nemesis in it. It also had Pyramid Head in it, and Zombie Apocalypse. God, reading it back now would be so cringe. But I'm glad that no copies of it still exist because that'd be so cringy. I have to think about like, could I write a book? Because I write all the time. I've written literally millions of words for Windows Central, millions of words, and I have to think about that. Could I write a book? Should I try and write a book? I don't know. I can't focus enough. So I like blog posts because like 1,000 words and then you're done. Writing a book, that's like effort.
That's a lot of effort. Marky Kelly says, Rand, what's your thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West? Haven't played it, so I don't really have any thoughts on it.
You're planning on playing it?
Yeah, I mean, I bought it, so like I'm gonna play it at some point. It's just a matter of what do I do with the first game? Do I play through the first game on like super easy difficulty just to experience the story and then play the second one? Do I skip the first game and just like watch like a recap on YouTube or something about the story elements? I'm trying to decide what would be the best way to go about it. Everyone's Idol Goro says, Jez, what's a better immersive sim RPG? Cyberpunk or Prey?
Oh man, I'd honestly have to say Prey. I think overall, for me personally, I preferred Prey to Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is maybe over ambitious. I think one of the reasons that I really enjoyed it was because, and I said this before, I played as a netrunner, specifically as a netrunner. And I thought the netrunner gameplay was really, really cool. Like you stealth, you can just hack people from across the room. It was a really unique way of playing. It felt kind of like almost a bit like Watch Dogs, where you hack the cameras and you can attack people remotely in some capacity. But it went even further than that. Like towards the end of Cyberpunk, if you're a netrunner, you get a spell where you can like control someone's cybernetics and make them shoot themselves. And I just thought I've never seen anything like that in a game. It was really, really cool and stuff like that. Like you're like this ultimate hacker to the point where you can do some of this stuff. That being said, some of the other playstyles, at least at launch, and like I would discover later from reading other people's reviews, because obviously I didn't have enough time to play more than one playstyle. I just sort of hoped that all the playstyles would be good, but so the other playstyles were just not that great. Like the shooting wasn't that good, and the sort of they pushed the whole cyborg ninja thing a lot in the trailers. Like you'd be a cyborg ninja stealthing around and stuff like that, but even that wasn't that good. There were no like this. In fact, there's still no executions using a katana, which I think is really strange in a game where you wanna push this fantasy of being a cyborg ninja like Raiden or something. You can't stealth kill people with a katana, which is so strange to me. But they have improved a lot of that stuff over time. but I felt like Prey's gameplay was polished and focused from the off. And yeah, you can argue that it had less different ways to play potentially. Like in Prey, you could basically either play as a stealth dude or maybe more of a heavy, focusing on weapons, or you could also play. I mean, this is like minor 5-year-old spoilers, I guess, but you can sort of play as an alien. You can you eventually unlock the ability to splice your DNA with the aliens, and then you can get all the wacky powers like turning into a coffee cup and stuff like that. You get that fairly early on, so it's not really a spoiler, I guess. But they were all really focused, and like, I guess the lack of not the lack of sort of overexerting themselves benefited Prey in a way that I feel like Cyberpunk kind of maybe was overambitious in some ways, and also they mismarketed it. I think a lot of people expected that game to be Grand Theft Auto. I think.
Yes, I think a lot.
Like, I watched a lot of the videos I saw that were criticizing Cyberpunk were basically they were like, "This isn't GTA." You know, a lot of people were expecting that game to be GTA, and I think that's where a lot of the backlash came from, honestly, because they marketed like it was going to be GTA. I was expecting Deus Ex. I was not expecting GTA, and for the most part, I felt like it was a great Deus Ex-like game, personally. And it's honestly one of my favorite games. It was my game of the year that year, easily. And you know, some of the stuff you do in it, some of the quests are just incredible. Super memorable. There's a quest called Pyramid Song, which, you know, I'm not going to spoil, but it was just absolutely mesmerizing. And also it had like Radiohead in the a Radiohead reference in there as well. So I was just like, yeah, this is an amazing game, and it's going to be memorable for me forever. But, you know, sadly, some things don't pan out the way you want them to, eh?
Yeah, Tito wants to know if there's any new leaks for Xbox projects, Jez.
That's interesting. That's an interesting topic. I recently found out that the Age of Mythology franchise is not dead.
Is that why you tweeted about it and Jeff Grubb retweeted you and said, "Huh, would be cool, huh?" Kind of.
Yeah, maybe. Age of Mythology, like, for those who don't know, Age of Mythology is kind of like the sort of more fantasy version of Age of Empires. You play as like ancient Egyptians. You play as and you can summon their gods and use their god powers and stuff. It had more like, I don't know, almost a Warcrafty kind of feel because it had magic in it. And I honestly preferred that style, like towards the sort of straight historical gameplay. I thought the magic and the comet spells and the super weapons you could use as a result of it being more like I don't know, fantasy based. I thought that made it more interesting. And apparently people at Microsoft think that it was pretty interesting too, because it does seem that the franchise is going to be revived in some way in the future.
So, incoming articles. Jez Corden confirms Age of Mythology coming back.
Maybe.
I
mean, plans can change.
Humdrum says,
you know, take it
any chances Crimson Skies returns by Asobo? I mean,
who knows? I haven't heard anything to that effect. Have you played Crimson Skies?
I don't think I have. No. I don't think I actually played that game when it was.
It's like a combat flight sim, right?
Yeah, I think.
I mean,
so.
it probably would make sense to some degree to, I don't know, make a sort of something that would use that engine, but make something that would appeal to people like me who want the violence. So, you know, maybe they could bring it back. I don't know, but I'm not sure how popular those games were. The Microsoft made a lot of accessories for Flight Simulator. It'd be a shame if they went to waste, right?
It'd be cool if they did something
also,
like those guys, yeah.
But also, like, I don't think Star Wars Squadrons did that well. Which obviously, like, would be probably a good test case for the appetite for that stuff, because Star Wars Squadrons was a really good game. It really was. Maybe, and it was also like a really big IP. So it's kind of like, you know, if that game doesn't do well, when it's like, you know, everything they did everything right, it's kind of like, would Crimson Skies do well, given that Star Wars Squadrons probably didn't do that great? So I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. We'll find out everything eventually. But with that, I think that's where we're going to end the show. Thanks for hanging out with us on Saturday. We'll be back hopefully next week on Friday to talk more about the world of video games and Xbox. And hopefully there'll be some cool things announced next week. So with that, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend, depending on when you listen to this, of course. We'll have it up on the podcast app soon enough. And keep it gaming, guys. Later.
Laters.